She doesn't truly listen to your words. She listens to your absence. That's the truth most men never grasp until it's already too late. You can write her long messages, explain your intentions in detail, remind her of your loyalty, and make sincere promises. But none of it alters her perception of you. Because what shifts everything isn't your effort. It's your silence. Not your explanations, but your complete detachment. Not halfway. Not with one foot still stuck in the hope that she'll return. Complete, unwavering detachment. That's what makes her notice. Because the moment you stop showing up, stop trying to earn her understanding, stop seeking her validation, that's when the energy begins to change. Something subtle, yet undeniable happens. She starts to feel the emptiness your presence used to fill. And suddenly, the man she assumed would always be there isn't. That's when her respect begins to grow, not because you punished her or tried to make her miss you, but because you finally elevated yourself. You stopped chasing her approval and started choosing your peace. You stopped speaking and started showing strength through silence. That single decision speaks louder than 1,000 explanations ever could. If you're tired of feeling invisible, of being misunderstood or taken for granted, understand this. Detaching completely isn't a sign of weakness. It's the ultimate act of strength. Because real respect doesn't come when you overextend yourself for someone who doesn't see you. It comes when you stop begging to be valued and begin valuing yourself in silence, in presence, in restraint. Respect doesn't begin when you show up all the time. It begins the moment you're willing to walk away with calm conviction. When a man stops clinging, stops needing constant reassurance, that's when a woman truly starts to see him differently. A man who lacks the ability to detach is a man who elevates her to a pedestal she never asked to be placed on. And no woman respects being idolized like a goddess. What she respects is a man grounded in his own value, his own presence, a man who knows that wholeness isn't found in her, but already exists within himself. The moment you let go of emotional dependency, everything changes. The dynamic shifts. She begins to feel the absence of your need. And in that space, something powerful is born. Curiosity, awareness, and even regret. The Stoic masters understood this long before modern psychology. Self-sufficiency isn't just a nice ideal. It's the very foundation of true strength. Marcus Aurelius taught that being ruled by external desires is weakness. A Stoic man isn't controlled by attention, praise, or validation. His sense of self-worth is rooted in something deeper, something immovable. Think about how often you used to reach out first, how you explained every moment of silence, how quickly you tried to fix the slightest emotional tension. But what if instead of trying to patch every crack, you simply chose to let things unfold? What if you let her sit with the silence, not out of resentment, but out of deep inner clarity? That kind of energy doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't orbit. It leads. She will notice it, not because you say something, but because you stop giving what once came so freely. Your time, your attention, your emotional labor. You begin walking your own path, not in reaction to her, but in alignment with yourself. That's the moment the entire power dynamic changes. You're no longer revolving around her. You've become the center of your own world again. And that shift, that quiet, unshakable calm, is exactly what draws her attention back. Not desperation, but discipline. Detachment isn't rejection, it's transformation. It's the bold declaration that says, I value myself enough not to chase what should be freely given. That mindset shifts everything. When you no longer beg, plead, or perform for affection, you reclaim your power. And that power doesn't just change how she sees you, it completely transforms how you see yourself. Respect doesn't come from pleading your case or laying out reasons why you deserve to be treated better. It comes from that quiet yet resolute energy that says, I'm done negotiating my worth. You no longer chase validation. You no longer bend for attention. You simply walk, steady, composed, focused. And that simple shift, it commands more respect than any emotional outburst ever could. Let's be clear. Walking away doesn't mean shutting down. It means redirecting your energy. Instead of over-explaining why you're stepping back, you simply step into a life that speaks. For itself, a Stoic man lives by action, not by justification. His silence is not empty. It is full of purpose. It communicates strength, not absence. While others may be shouting for attention, he lets his focus do the talking. When she pulls away, most men crumble. They flood her inbox with apologies, paragraphs of explanations, endless questions. But a grounded man does the opposite. He doesn't disappear to make a statement. He simply moves with purpose. He hits the gym. He studies. He works on his craft. He pours into his circle. And that silence, not cold, but calm, speaks volumes. This is what the Stoics called apatheia. Not apathy in the modern sense, but emotional clarity. It is the ability to remain composed even when the tides change. Not because you feel nothing, but because your peace means more than your ego. You don't react with desperation, you respond with direction. That's the essence of detachment. It's not about punishing her with silence, it's about refusing. To abandon yourself for someone who isn't showing up. You're not explaining your distance. You're embodying your worth. That's the kind of quiet that lingers. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. True power is not found in noise. It's discovered in restraint. When the world spins with drama and chaos, the man who remains still becomes unshakable. That's the Stoic principle. To be like a rock the waves crash upon, but one that does not move. And when she senses that you no longer react to her distance with panic, but instead respond with calm, something within her shifts. Walking your own path doesn't mean turning your back on her. It means turning inward, toward your own mission, your peace, your identity. You're no longer revolving around her moods or expectations. You're walking in alignment with your purpose. That presence, centered, silent, sure, it commands respect not through fear or control, but through grounded certainty. Imagine the contrast. One man reacts emotionally to every text, every silence, every cold reply. Another man observes it all, feels it, but does not let it shake him. He redirects his energy, goes to the gym, he builds his business, spends time with people who uplift him. And most importantly, he doesn't explain his shift, he lives it. She will feel that. She may not admit it out loud, but the absence of your emotional dependence will echo louder than any words ever could. That silence, backed by consistent action, makes her pause. Why isn't he trying anymore? Why isn't he chasing like before? That confusion turns into curiosity. That curiosity turns into reflection. And that's when the polarity flips. You no longer need her to validate your emotions. You've stepped into your own gravity. The man who used to orbit around her now stands in his own light. He's calm. He's focused. He's unavailable, not because he's playing games, but because he's finally available to himself. This is not revenge. This is realignment. You are no longer trying to fix what she broke or prove what she doubted. You are simply becoming the version of yourself who doesn't need to be understood, only respected. And that, more than anything, is what makes her see you through a new lens. Not as someone she can manipulate, but as someone she cannot replace. When a woman pulls away, most men panic. They scramble to decode her silence, to fix what feels broken, to win her back with frantic energy. But a Stoic man doesn't chase. He pauses. He mirrors the distance. It's not with bitterness, not with coldness, but with clarity. He doesn't ask what went wrong. Instead, he asks himself, what's worth preserving her attention or my peace? In the space that follows detachment, she begins to feel something unfamiliar. Your absence, not just physically, but emotionally, are no longer pouring. Your time, presence, and energy into someone who isn't doing the same. And it's in that quiet withdrawal that she starts to feel the gravity of what she once took for granted. There's no need for explanations, no dramatic exit, no cryptic messages. You've simply stopped giving yourself away. That's not cruelty, that's discipline. Marcus Aurelius once said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should. Be one. And you've chosen to be that man. You're not looking for her reaction. You're not clinging to the hope that she'll change. You've already changed, you've evolved. Her uncertainty is not your cue to fight harder. It's your mirror. It reflects who you are when the ground shifts beneath your feet. You remain centered? Will you stay calm? Or will you fall into the spiral of proving your worth to someone who stops seeing it? Let her wonder. Let her sit in the void where your energy used to be. Let her feel the absence of the man who once gave freely without asking for anything in return. You don't need to teach her a lesson. You don't need to punish her silence. You simply stop participating in the dynamic that drains your soul. This is detachment, not from her, but from the version of yourself that believed love required self-abandonment. The moment you no longer orbit her attention, you reclaim your gravity. And that's the kind of shift no woman forgets, because it's not about getting her back. It's about finally getting yourself back. And that's where true power lives. You don't need to storm out, raise your voice, or post mysterious quotes on social media. True detachment doesn't come with an announcement. It arrives in silence. It's not because you're playing games, but because your attention has shifted. Inward, you're no longer offering explanations. You're offering space, and that void you leave behind. It says more than any carefully crafted message ever could. A Stoic man understands the value of emotional clarity. He doesn't need to dramatize his departure to make an impact. Instead, he simply withdraws, calmly, purposefully, with dignity. He recognizes that staying emotionally connected to someone who no longer reciprocates is a form of quiet self-betrayal. So he lets go, not because he no longer cares, but because he finally cares about himself more. The power isn't in disappearing suddenly or ghosting out of spite. It's in choosing yourself without asking for permission. That kind of detachment is rooted not in resentment, but in wisdom. And women can feel it. They sense when a man has truly let go, not just physically, but emotionally. He's not checking her stories. He's not refreshing her feed. He's not waiting for breadcrumbs of attention. He's building. He's rising. This isn't emotional limbo. It's complete freedom. Because partial detachment, the kind where you hold back but still hope, still watch, still wait, that doesn't change anything. It only keeps you stuck. True power comes when you stop giving energy to someone who doesn't value it. You reclaim your presence. You redirect your focus. And you do it in silence. Let her feel the absence of the man who used to show up without hesitation, the one who gave without limits. Let her sit with the echo of your calm, because when that energy vanishes, it doesn't leave a hole, it leaves a message. I no longer abandon myself for the comfort of your inconsistency. Marcus Aurelius didn't chase applause, didn't demand recognition. He lived with purpose. That's what you're doing now. You're not trying to be missed. You're becoming unforgettable, not through noise, but through evolution. And that kind of presence is never forgotten. It lingers, reshapes how she sees you, not as someone she left, but as someone she underestimated, and now cannot reach. Rejection doesn't define your worth. What truly diminishes you is the attachment that follows. Most men think the pain comes from hearing it's over, but the deeper damage sets in. When they continue to cling to her energy long after she's gone, you replay the last conversation in your head. You check her page. You hope for closure in her silence. But none of that helps you heal. In fact, it's what holds you back. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wisely put it, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. It's not what happened, it's how we continue to carry it that causes the most pain. So stop replaying her words. Stop assigning meaning to her delay in replying. Detach not just from her presence, but from the narrative you've built around her absence. When you truly let go, something powerful happens. She feels that mental and emotional distance long before she notices the physical one. Because when you're no longer waiting on her attention, you no longer orbit her world, hoping to be pulled back in, that's when the energy shifts. That's when respect begins to grow. Not just in her eyes, but in your own. It's not the rejection that breaks a man. It's the inability to release the fantasy of what could have been. Many men confuse emotional addiction with love. They obsess over someone who no longer values them, not out of loyalty, but out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. But those fears dissolve the moment you realize her opinion is not your mirror. Now imagine a man who chooses a different path. He hears the no, he feels the sting, but he doesn't resist. He lets reality stand. He doesn't spiral into overthinking or chase after lost validation. Instead, he returns to his path. He pours energy into his goals. He nourishes his discipline. He sharpens his focus. That man becomes a mystery. It's not because he's hiding, but because he's evolving. And that's when something clicks, not just in her, but in the world around him. He no longer seeks to be seen. He becomes someone worth noticing. And it all began the moment he stopped resisting rejection and started embracing redirection. That's where self-respect is born. That's where freedom begins. Desire is fleeting, but discipline endures. In the eyes of a woman, the man who once chased, flattered, and constantly reached out may have seemed sweet, even charming. But over time, that version of you became predictable, too available, too eager, and with that, the magnetism faded. Why? Because desire built on dependency always dissolves. But the man who replaces desire with discipline, he becomes something entirely different. He becomes magnetic. You used to be the one sending good morning texts like clockwork, adjusting your day around her mood, and waiting anxiously for her replies. But that's not who you are now. Now you rise before the sun. Not for her approval, but for your mission. You train not to impress, but to strengthen your body, your foundation. You read not to impress, but to sharpen your mind, your weapon. Every part of you is now in motion toward something greater than her attention. That's the essence of Stoic masculinity. You stop orbiting someone else's world and return to your own center. You stop reacting and start building. You no longer perform for affection. You perform for purpose. And she can feel it. She senses that something has shifted, that the energy she once took for granted is no longer pouring toward her. She may wonder why you've gone silent, why you no longer seek her validation, why you're suddenly hard to reach. But deep down, she knows. That kind of calm isn't a tactic, it's a transformation. That kind of peace isn't about detachment, it's about evolution. You've become a man of routine, of structure, of unwavering intent. And that kind of man? He's rare. Seneca once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." That principle applies here. The moment you stop needing her attention, your presence becomes more powerful. She's no longer the prize. Your growth is. And when you pursue that growth with unwavering consistency, something changes in how she sees you. She starts to respect you, not because you tried harder, but because you no longer needed her to feel whole. You became whole on your own. That is the moment she truly sees you, not as the man who chased her, but as the man she wishes she had seen sooner. This is not about pulling back to play games. It's about stepping into the man you were meant to become. You're not detaching because you want her to chase. You're detaching because the version of yourself that once waited on her approval no longer exists. You've evolved. And now, the man she once knew is a ghost, replaced by someone with direction, discipline, and quiet power. You're no longer the man refreshing her profile, crafting the perfect message, or trying to create accidental encounters. That was the old you, the one whose sense of worth depended on her attention. But something inside you shifted. You no longer rise to be seen, you rise to build. Your mornings are filled with movement. Your mind is sharper, clearer, your emotions are steady. And that calm doesn't come from pretending. It comes from finally letting go. You're not running from pain. You're growing through it. That's the Stoic way. Growth that's silent, personal, and powerful. A woman begins to respect you, not when you chase her, but when she realizes you don't need her to function. When your happiness, your energy, your clarity are no longer tied to whether or not she's watching. Then something unexpected happens. She begins to remember you, not as the man who begged, but as the man she misread. The one who stayed calm when others lost control. The one who disappeared not to punish her but to preserve himself. The one who no longer fit into the box she once put him in. You didn't get louder, you got better. You didn't post quotes for her to see. You posted results with your life, your habits, your presence. And she starts asking herself the one question that always brings a shift. Did he change, or did I just never really see him? That's the paradox of Stoic evolution. The less you try to be noticed, the more noticeable you become. Not for who you used to be, but for the man you've become without her. And that kind of man isn't weak. It's already moving forward. Not bitter, not cold, just beyond reach. You've evolved, not for revenge, not for attention, but for peace. And in doing so, you've become the kind of man she didn't expect to lose, and the one she'll never truly get back. You are no longer the man who waits, who wonders, who hopes for her message. That version of you faded the moment you stopped living in response to her attention. She let go. Now you must do the same. It's not because you want to hurt her. Not because you want to erase her. But because you've realized something far more important. Freedom comes when you stop needing to be remembered. Let her chase the version of you she ignored. Is that man the one who showed up consistently, who gave freely, who poured love without question, is no longer standing still? He's moving forward, and if she wants a second chance, she now has to pursue it. That's the price of respect. Because a woman only begins to truly see your value when she feels what life is like without it. This isn't revenge, this is clarity. This is you honoring your own standards. Because when a woman pulls away, when she becomes inconsistent, many men lower their bar. They start explaining more, chasing more, hoping more. But the Stoic man does the opposite. He doesn't try to convince her to stay. He simply stops offering his presence to someone who treats it like a given. And here's what happens when you stop showing up for her validation. You start showing up for your own mission. You begin investing in your goals, your health, your mental clarity. You become the man who doesn't perform for applause, but earns respect simply by being. And in that transformation, something powerful happens. You stop waiting. You stop needing. You start becoming. The truth is, the longer you chase someone who's unsure about you, the further you drift from yourself. Let her feel the absence of your emotional availability. Let her wonder what changed. Let her face the version of you she can no longer reach, not because you're punishing her, but because you've simply evolved past the place where she left you. She may reach out. She may test the waters. But this time, you're not reacting. You're not orbiting. You've returned to your core. The strongest move is never to pull back and wait. It's to evolve so far that reaching you requires real effort, real change, and real respect. And that's a level not every woman is prepared to meet. There comes a point when holding on starts to cost more than letting go, not just emotionally, but spiritually. You begin to feel the drain, your energy scattered, your thoughts consumed, your peace disrupted, and for what? Someone will one day realize your worth? That's not strength. That's a quiet form of self-neglect. You don't need to be seen to be valuable. You don't need her to circle back to feel complete. What you need is alignment. And that begins with letting go fully, peacefully, without theatrics. She started pulling away, and instead of matching her energy, you surpassed it. It's not by playing cold or indifferent, but by becoming invisible by choice. You're not hiding, you've simply stopped performing. This is the essence of Stoic detachment. You no longer place your value in how someone responds to you. You reclaim your time, your space, your mission. You stop giving pieces of yourself to someone who can't even recognize the gift. That's not bitterness, that's sovereignty, Marcus Aurelius wrote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. And so, you've chosen to control the only thing you truly can, your response. You're no longer trying to win her attention, decode her silence, or guess her feelings. You've dropped the need to be understood. In doing so, you've stepped into something far greater, peace. She once had access to all of you, your time, your care, your presence. Now, all she sees are glimpses, a man who is building, a man who no longer lingers. You're not sending likes, you're not reacting to stories, you're not leaving digital breadcrumbs. You become a ghost, not out of immaturity, but out of growth. And what haunts her now is not your absence. It's the man she never thought would walk away so completely. That man who once showed up with an open heart has now closed the door gently and walked into a life she no longer has a key to. That's not a tactic. That's transformation. You're not playing hard to get. You're just finally hard to reach. Because now you belong to your future, not your past. And that's the moment she begins to realize. She didn't lose the old you. She lost the chance to meet the man you were becoming. Respect isn't born from noise. It's born from presence and the quiet strength of choosing yourself. You don't have to shout your worth. You don't need to broadcast your transformation. When you vanish with peace, when you disappear, with dignity, the echo of that silence leaves a mark deeper than words ever could. You once thought that being loud, being visible, being persistent would prove your devotion. But the truth is, she only begins to respect you when she feels your absence, not as a punishment, but as a statement. A gesseration that says, I don't need to be seen to be strong. I don't need to be heard to be whole. That shift happens when you stop orbiting her world and start building your own. When your days are no longer dictated by her presence or her mood, but by your mission. You don't need to provoke a reaction. You don't need to inspire regret. You simply need to return to yourself fully, intentionally. The Stoics understood this well. They didn't act out of spite or seek validation. They acted in alignment. With their principles, they built lives rooted in clarity, purpose, and calm. And so must you. You're not here to perform. You're here to evolve. Let her wonder. Let her ask herself why you're no longer there, why the man who once gave so freely now walks so quietly. Let her feel the shift, not in your words, but in your energy. Because when you stop trying to be understood and start becoming someone who no longer needs to be, you become undeniable. She won't forget the man who left with grace. It's the one who didn't chase, who didn't fight to be chosen, but instead chose himself. That kind of silence carries weight, disrupts her expectations. It forces reflection. You're no longer asking to be seen. You're now living in a way that can't be ignored. If she ever comes looking, if she ever reaches for the version of you she once knew, she won't find him, because that man didn't disappear. He evolved. He didn't retreat. He rebuilt. And what stands in his place now is someone she can't predict, can't control, and maybe can no longer reach. And that's the difference between leaving to get her back and leaving because you finally got yourself back. It's not about ignoring her. It's about no longer needing her energy to feel like a man. That's when everything changes. Because the moment you stop seeking her validation is the moment she begins to notice your transformation. Not because you tried to show her, but because your evolution speaks for itself. You don't pull back hoping she'll chase. You don't create distance to make her feel guilt or confusion. You evolve, and in doing so, you become someone she never expected to lose. That's the paradox. When you stop waiting for her recognition, that's often when she starts reflecting, not because you forced her to, but because the energy you once gave so freely has now turned inward into growth, into discipline, into strength. She may scroll through your stories wondering why you've gone so quiet. She may test the waters, send a vague text, or drop hints. But you no longer bite. You've stopped orbiting. You've stopped reacting. And that stillness, it's not cold. It's composed. It's the strength of a man who no longer asks for closure because he's already found it within. Every effort she once expected from you has now been rerouted. That emotional effort, that mental bandwidth, that focus, it's now invested into your vision, into your health, into your purpose. You're not fading out of bitterness. You're rising in silence. And the man you're becoming, he's not an updated version of who she knew. He's unrecognizable in the best way. She start to wonder, was he always like this? Did I just not see it? But the truth is, you were becoming this all along. She just didn't look deeply enough, or maybe she didn't value it when she had it. And now she feels the absence, not of your words, but of your access. The door isn't locked. It's just no longer where she left it. Because now, your life doesn't have space for anyone who only appreciated you in fragments. You've raised your standard, not with speeches, but with silence. You don't chase attention. You attract reflection. That's the Stoic path. Quiet, unwavering, and undeniably powerful. You didn't leave for her to find you again. You left to find yourself. And in doing so, you became the kind of man who no longer needs to be found, only respected. Respect isn't earned by louder words or more effort. It's earned through your boundaries, your energy, and your willingness to walk away without bitterness. Everything you've gone through has led to one powerful truth. A woman begins to truly respect you when you stop trying to be understood and start becoming someone who no longer needs to explain himself. Detachment isn't about disappearing to play mind games. It's not about creating confusion or manipulating emotions. It's about clarity. It's about choosing to invest your time, energy, and attention into your own life. Because you finally understand that no one else can live it for you. You stop orbiting her. You stop waiting for her to realize what she lost. Instead, you realize what you've been losing by waiting: your peace, your focus, your sense of self. So you reclaim it quietly, intentionally. This isn't silence for silence's sake. This is silence with direction. You don't vanish hoping she'll notice. You vanish because you've turned inward. You're building again, grounding yourself in purpose. You're not punishing her with absence. You're blessing yourself with presence. The Stoics never taught that emotion was weakness. They taught that emotional control was strength. That true freedom is found not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. And that's what you've done. You're no longer moved by every shift in her mood. You're no longer tethered to her response or reaction. Instead, you're anchored in your values. You lead yourself with calm. You live with principle, not performance. And that's why your absence now carries weight. It's not because you slammed a door. It's because you walked out quietly, without looking back, and never once paused to prove your point. And if she ever thinks back, and she will, it won't be the conversations she remembers. It will be the way you withdrew without drama. The way your silence spoke louder than your presence ever could. The way you stopped trying to be chosen and started choosing yourself. That is where your respect begins. That is where your peace lives. And that is the man she never expected to lose. The one who didn't need her to know his worth, because he finally knew it for himself. There's a difference between walking away to get someone back and walking away because you got yourself back. And that difference is everything. Because when you detach from someone who once made you question your worth, you're not retreating. In defeat, you're rising in quiet certainty. She might look back and wonder what happened. She may try to retrace her steps, scroll through your old messages, revisit the moments when you were still chasing. But all she'll find now is stillness. A gap where your attention used to be. Silence that holds no bitterness, only peace. You're no longer waiting to be remembered. You've released the need to be seen. You're not leaving digital clues or emotional crumbs. You're not trying to appear strong. You've simply become strong. That's the Stoic way. You know, longer react to rejection like it defines you. Instead, you let it refine you. Now, every morning, you rise with purpose. Your time isn't spent wondering what she's thinking. It's invested in who you're becoming. It's the gym, the books, your work. These are not distractions. They are the tools of your transformation, and she will feel it. Not because you told her, but because your absence, your globe, your growth is undeniable. She once had unrestricted access to your energy, your heart, your presence. And now, she only sees glimpses. A focused man, no longer within reach. That mystery, it's not calculated. It's real. Because you've stepped fully into your next chapter, and she's no longer a character in it. When she scrolls and doesn't see your name, when she texts and you no longer rush to respond, when she realizes the version of you she took for granted no longer exists, that's when she feels the weight of your detachment. Not as punishment, but as consequence. You're not becoming distant to hurt her, you're becoming disciplined to heal yourself. And that level of growth, it can't be faked. It can't be chased. It must be earned. So if she wants anything, now she's the one who has to reach. Whether she does or doesn't no longer controls your direction. Because the man you've become no longer seeks permission to move forward. He just moves. With calm, with clarity, and without looking back. You don't need a dramatic finale to make your impact felt. You don't need closure from her or one last conversation. Because true closure doesn't come from someone else's validation. It comes when you finally choose yourself without hesitation. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Detachment isn't about turning your back. It's about turning toward what matters most. Your values, your mission, your peace. You've stopped orbiting, no longer available on standby. Your energy is no longer scattered, trying to win over someone who failed to see you. Instead, you're centered, grounded, and more alive than you've ever been. Not because she chose you, but because you finally chose yourself. Let her feel that shift. Let her sit with the absence of the man who once over-explained, overgave, and overextended himself. Let her hear the silence where your attention used to echo. It's not as revenge, but as a new reality. Because now, you're no longer playing a role in someone else's story. You're writing your own. This journey wasn't about forgetting her. It was about remembering you. The version of you that existed before the overthinking, the overcompensating, the self-doubt. The version of you that stands tall, not in pride, but in presence. The man who walks into every room without needing to be noticed, but who always leaves an impression. You don't speak to be heard anymore. You live to be felt. You've embodied your transformation. And that's why you no longer explain your worth, you live it. The strongest men don't seek attention. They draw respect simply by how they carry themselves. That's who you've become. So if she ever thinks back, it won't be your absence that surprises her. It'll be your evolution. The fact that you didn't just move on, you leveled up. You didn't become colder. You became clearer. That kind of clarity doesn't chase. It doesn't explain. It just moves forward, with grace, with certainty, and with the quiet power of a man who's finally at peace. You're no longer becoming who she wanted. You're becoming who you were meant to be. And that's a path only you can walk, steady, strong, and unapologetically free. What you've just lived through wasn't just a breakup. It was a revelation. A moment that peeled back the surface of who you thought you were and revealed something deeper. The need to stop chasing, understanding, and start embodying your own truth. Because she may never fully understand what she lost, and that's okay. This journey was never about her. It was about you finally seeing yourself clearly. You've tried explaining, you've tried fixing, you've even tried waiting. But now, you've chosen something far more powerful, walking away without resentment. You've stopped orbiting. You've stopped asking. You've stopped showing up where you're no longer seen. It's not ego. That's growth. The Stoics didn't live for attention. They lived by intention. They didn't try to convince others of their worth. They lived in such a way that their worth was self-evident. And that's what you've begun to do. You've stopped performing for approval and started building your life from within, brick by brick, in silence, in strength. Let her feel the echo of your absence, not as punishment, but as a reminder of what it means when a man returns to himself. You're not just a memory now. You're a moment of reflection she didn't expect. You didn't leave to make her regret. You left to protect your dignity. You didn't detach to make her miss you. You detached because staying would have meant losing yourself, and now you carry yourself differently. With calm, with presence, with power that doesn't shout. It simply is. You no longer seek answers in someone else's eyes. You found them within. And the most powerful truth? You're not angry, you're grateful. Because that pain woke you up, stripped away illusion, brought you home to discipline, to clarity, to peace. You don't chase closure anymore. You are the closure. And if she ever remembers you, let it be for the man who walked away not to hurt her, but to heal himself. Let it be for the quiet strength she didn't recognize until it was gone, because you're no longer chasing what you lost. You're walking boldly toward everything you were meant to gain.